Good day and welcome to A Place Called Through. I am your host, Patricia Wade Goings, and we're broadcasting from WYTV7 Community Broadcasters Network. You know, A Place Called Through, people often ask, what is a place called through? Well, simple answer to this. In life, you go through, you get through, and coming through is what makes the difference. And those are the stories that we share here on A Place Called Through. Diverse stories from real people who are actually going through everyday life situations. And so today we're hearing a story from a young lady who has gone through neglect and abuse in her early life and now has moved on to a very successful life. Again, be reminded, we said coming through makes the difference. And so, we can only share these kind of stories because of you and for you. And it's done because of those charitable donations. So we ask you, please continue. And if you haven't, sow your seed today to wytv.org into this ministry so that we can help to empower, encourage, and inspire you and many others. Welcome to A Place Called Through, Ms. Gonzalez. We certainly welcome you today.
Thank you. It is a pleasure and an honor and a joy to be with you this afternoon.
Again, we thank you to our listeners and our viewers for tuning in as well. And we want to go ahead and begin this story today. And it is unfortunate that, so many kids grow up in homes of neglect and being abused. But you never think that as a child, this is going to happen to you, to me. You think that your childhood is going to be so full of fun and laughter and joy. But then there comes a situation in time where things turn differently. So Ms. Gonzalez, talk to us. In your early childhood, you experienced some of those issues of being neglected and abused, where you felt that life, you were going to just be outside playing with your friends and going back and forth to school and playing with other family members. So talk to us, what was your early childhood life with your mom and your dad?
Well, my story and my growing up was different in a way because on the outside looking in, you wouldn't have noticed anything or think that anything was wrong, because my parents were really good when on the outside to portray that this perfect, happy little family, but behind closed doors was a living nightmare. And so growing up in my house, even though I had a dad, I still do, he was really did not play a big role. And my mother was the one who was more the aggressor. She had a really hard time with dealing with her anger, and she would take it out on me, and, which would be in forms of, physical abuse and verbal abuse. And, and she was really good at portraying our life to others as if nothing was wrong. And so that in itself was really conflicting. I remember a time when I think I was like in high school, and the houses that we lived in, there was an apartment complex right behind us. And I went to school the next day, and a friend of mine approached me. She's like, "Hey," she's like, "Natalie, is everything okay?" I was like, "Yeah, everything's okay." I was like, "Why do you ask?" She said, "Well, I could hear your mother screaming and yelling at your house. Like, you could hear her all the way from where you live." I was just like, "Oh my goodness." So it was very much a balancing act, trying to live that lifestyle, not knowing how to navigate and going through this, which really affected my self-esteem, my self-worth. And many people probably wouldn't believe the things that are going on in the house because it was so hidden.
And again, most of what was really going on the inside, it was never really revealed to the outside world. So as you just stated, people would think, oh, it's happy-go-lucky, she's the happy, child. They had no idea that you were actually being, abused and a victim of neglect. by your very own mom. And that's an alarming point right there, because, as moms, most of the time we're those emotional people, and the children tend to attach themselves more to the moms. Not to say that they don't attach to the dads, but the moms,
Yeah.
because we're the more, I would say, the emotional, the compassionate people, and we're there pretty much as the homemakers, and a lot of times when the dads are out, working. But I just want to share these stats that I found. Statistics indicates that at least 1 in 7 children have experienced child abuse or neglect in the past year. And we're in 2022. So 2021, that's what was going on in the United States. It also indicates that this is likely an underestimated, because many cases are what unreported. Again, nobody really knew. 1,750 children have actually died of abuse and neglect in the United States. And I mean, it just continues to spread. So there has to be a solution to this. And, they always say that you need to report it to someone so that you can get help. And, you have the National Center for Child Abuse, you have the Department of Social Services, and you have the Sheriff Department that's ready to help you. So if you know someone that's in this situation, please, I encourage you, find that help somebody. So, knowing that,
Well,
all of,
as,
yes, ma'am.
I think more children do not voice what's going on because of fear. I mean, that's the way I felt when I was growing up, fear of the reaction of the parent or parents. What happens what's going to happen to me when they find out that I was the one that went and told everyone. I grew up as an only child. So I dealt with this by myself, so, my father, he was there, but he was very absent. He dove himself in his work and really didn't pay much attention to what was really going on in the household.
So it was pretty much just you and your mother. And because she was having issues outside, that she took out a lot of this frustration out on you, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Because she herself did not know where to turn to, who to go to, and perhaps there was an issue of trusting someone else that she could actually share what she was going through.
And that could be possible. My mother herself also grew up in a home where there was quite a bit of violence. So a lot of times we just continue what we know when we have our own kids, until someone decides in our generation to break that cycle.
And that's what you did later on as you matured, and you said, okay, we're done with this part of this chapter here. Let's write another chapter. So life took a twist for you. And you've already gone through all of this neglect, mistreatment at home, never expecting that this was the path that was going to continue for a while. So you had to do something different. So now you've gone through this and you're able to get out on your own. And so when you get out on your own, what goes on there?
Well, I left home at around 18 years old, and not really knowing life experiences and what to expect and how to navigate all of that. And like I said, that caused lots of low self-esteem in me, and trying to find acceptance in anywhere, in any crowd. And, and I did not have a level head of thinking and understanding. And when I was in school during that time, and I had a boyfriend. We were both young. I think he was a year and a half younger than me, and I wind up getting pregnant.
Okay, we want you to stay right there with that thought, Ms. Gonzalez. I don't want to interrupt you, but we've got to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back and talk about your pregnancy and your marriage and life thereafter. So if you will, stay right there with us, stay tuned. We'll be right back after this quick commercial to a place called Through, broadcasting from WYTV7 Community Broadcasters Network. Stay tuned. We'll be right back momentarily.
Happy is an intentional and lifelong journey, but it's hard to change and grow towards higher levels of happy without knowing where you're starting from. Our Happy Quiz puts a starting pin on the map to your happy living and provides additional guidance and motivation along the way. Just go to happyliving.com and take the Happy Quiz to get started on your road to happy.
Welcome back. Welcome back to a place called Through. I am your host, Patricia Wade Goings, and we're broadcasting today live from WYTV7 Community Broadcasters Network. We have the honor and the privilege to be speaking with Ms. Natalie Gonzalez today, who has been sharing her story of being neglected and abused by her own mother during her early childhood. But she's been blessed and she's been fortunate, and as we said at the top of the hour, about going through and getting through. So she was able to get through that period of time in her life, unsuspecting and unknowing that yet somewhere along the line, more abuse was about to come. And so we're going to pick up where we left off at, that now she's out of school, getting into relationships, identifying with other people. So if you will, Ms. Gonzalez, continue right there with us.
Yes. So I found out later on that I became pregnant, and the gentleman that I got pregnant by, he was also not level-headed either as well. And, he dabbled in some drug use and everything. So when we found out, I was given the choice to keep the pregnancy or abort, is what they offered me. And so abortion, it didn't sit right with me at all. And so I gave birth to my first child and tried to figure a way to raise this child. And there was a time where a mother, she was going to take care of her grandchild, but the life that I led with her left such a lasting impact that I was fearful that my first child was going to experience the same treatment that I had with her. And I was not okay with that. And for 2 years, I struggled with raising him. And during that time, I was living in Florida. Then I moved to Georgia. Even there was a point where I was living in an abandoned house because, my father, he tried to help, but his wife during that time just did not want me there or my child, so they kicked me out. And so I was forced to find ways to, to survive. And I was from homeless shelter to homeless shelter, and to a point where I also was living on the streets. And I decided, this is something that I can't do. I'm like literally drowning, trying to take care of this child that I can barely feed. And I meet someone who had good intentions, but did not. I found out later on, and actually, he seemed to be a nice guy and helped every once in a while. But on one occasion, he took advantage of me and wound up being pregnant again. And I did not know what to do with myself. I'm just like, Lord, what do I do? I can barely make it with this child. Now I am pregnant again. And so I decided, once my second child was born, that I was going to place them both up for adoption.
But then, you were struggling still because of the neglect and the abuse that you had already received through your mom. And now you're like, okay, you're finding relationships, thinking that, okay, this is going to resolve, and then I'm going to have the love of my life. But then there was another twist that comes, when you even still had to make that decision. And that was, where were you going to actually go? Which side were you going to take? And to whom were you going to actually be able to trust and to lean and depend on? And then there comes this revelation, this newfound relationship with God. What was that like?
Well, my relationship with God was very rocky in the beginning. I'm not going to lie, because I didn't really have the solid faith that I had today. So, but I would always lean on prayer, though, even though I felt like I really didn't know much about my faith, or, how to deepen my faith, because I didn't go to church like that. I wasn't surrounded by people who were pouring into me like that to strengthen my faith. And so there were even times where I even doubted that God even existed, and even had thoughts of dabbling in other religions, even Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam. I was looking into all these other areas because of all the struggles that I was going through. There were a lots of doubt that God was forming in my younger years, growing up into my 20s and and into my 30s.
But then you finally, you gave in, you surrendered to what you actually knew. And like you said, other people were around you and sharing, the love of Jesus with you. And so you finally decided, okay, this is the new walk. This is the avenue that I'm going to actually walk down. And so as those began to, that new journey now has started for you, you decided, after all of your abuse and your neglect and having to decide, where am I going to go? And even as you stated, the homelessness and living from place to place, you wanted to give something back. So tell us about that part of giving back now and what you're doing.
Well, it wasn't until in my second marriage. I've been married twice, and which the first one also dealt with abuse and neglect and alcoholism. He was an alcoholic. And I remarried again in 2006. And so, and we had been together for about 8 years, I would say, during that time. And we decided to move because my husband works in welding, and so he's out of the state often. And we moved to kind of help with his commute that would be less. And so when we moved, it totally took me out of my comfort zone. We were living in like really close to downtown Raleigh. When we moved to the country, where I have never ever lived so isolated, like where I currently live now. And in like the first year, I completely hated it. And it wasn't until I learned about this church that was really close by, that this pastor there, she began to really pour into me. And when she did, my spiritual growth began to change and grow, and really got involved in my local community, working in many ministries, especially a lot of ministries with the youth and other community events. And during this time of really deepening my faith and learning and growing and getting involved with the church and in the community, I felt a calling that God placed in my life, which I never imagined would happen, would become a pastor. And I'm a person that does not have formal theological studies. And I struggled with that for a couple of years, really accepting that call.
So let me just interrupt you right here, because we're about to run out of time, and I want to make sure that we can get that part in to our listeners and viewers. So now, you're in this new relationship and you've called to pastor, because we got pretty much like 1 minute left. And I just want to share with them where you are and how people can reach out to you to get more about your story and how you have overcome abuse and neglect.
Yes. So besides being a pastor, I've also become a certified life coach and published my very first book a couple of months ago, titled 12 Steps of Faith, Leading You to the Promises of God. And so my website is revealinggodsgreatness.com, and you can see all about my life coaching and me, and have any questions, I can be easily reached there, or by email, revealinggreatness.com.
Well, it looks like we have actually run out of time. The clock has unwound for us and we're out of time. We do apologize for the length of it, but we do hope that our listeners and our viewers will tune in once again to A Place Called Through to hear more from these stories such as this, abuse and neglect, but I am redeemed now. Once again, I am your host, Patricia Wade Goings, and we're broadcasting from A Place Called Through at WYTV7 Community Broadcasters Network. We wish you a wonderful day. Blessings and love.